Welcome to Chapter 5. In this video, we're going to discuss the microanatomy and overview of our skeletal systems. So as an outline, keep in mind that the skeletal system incorporates not just bones, but also our joints, our cartilage, and our ligaments. For this video, we'll talk about the overview, and then for the next video, we'll talk about the axial and appendicular skeleton, as well as joints and developmental aspects. Our learning objectives for this part are to connect the function of bones to their structure, to compare compact and spongy bone, and classify bones by shape, to understand the structure of a long bone and the role of growth plates, to describe the microstructure of bones, identify bone landmarks, and compare the processes of bone growth and bone remodeling. So let's start with the 5 major functions of bones. They are to support, protect, aid in movement, store minerals, and help make blood cells. So for support, this is mainly talking about the body. It helps hold up our structure, our posture, the muscles connect here. And this is in part because bones are so strong. Because of their strength, they're also able to protect us. So we have bones like our skull protecting our brain and our ribs protecting our heart and lungs. Bones work with muscles for movement. The muscles act on levers. We're able to move our arms and legs. Bones are a good storage for minerals, specifically calcium. Our body needs to keep calcium at a very specific set level, homeostasis, remember that term. And so it'll use the bones as a place to put extra calcium. And finally, hematopoiesis, or the creation of red blood cells, is a process that occurs in our bone marrow, so inside our bones. And in our adult skeleton, we have 206 bones approximately, and there are 2 major bone tissues in our bones. Compact bone, which is dense and smooth and traditionally is on the outside of bones, and on the inside we're going to see spongy bone, also sometimes called trabecular bone, and this is small pieces with lots of open spaces. Bones can be classified by their shape, just generally looking at them, and we have 4 major classifications that way. Long bones is what we're going to focus on for this class. This is where the length is bigger than the width. They have a shaft with heads on both ends. And this is where you're going to see lots of compact bone. Because they're so big, most of that surface area, again, it has to be covered in the compact bone. And these are like the bones of our limbs, like our humerus and our upper arm. We also have flat bones, which are thin, sometimes curved, and they're a sandwich of compact, spongy, and compact bone. And we find this in our sternum and our ribs and our skull. We can have some short bones. These are more cube space. Again, because they have less surface area and more volume, they're mainly spongy bone. Again, spongy bone is on the inside. This is in places like our wrist or our ankle. A specific type of short bone is a sesamoid bone, which forms in the tendons, like our patella or our kneecap. And finally, we have irregular bones, which occur in just other sizes. It's the miscellaneous category, and typically this is what we classify our vertebra as. Now let's talk about the structure of bones. So we look at the anatomy of a long bone, and again, we're going to focus on long bones here for our microanatomy. We can see that it has both a proximal and a distal epiphysis, which is the ends of it, and again, it has that compact bone on the outside with spongy bone in the middle, and it's covered in articular cartilage, which is a type of hyaline cartilage that allows for movement. Articulate means the joining of 2 bones. We also have a diaphysis, which is the shaft or the middle part of the bone. Again, this mainly compact bone here covered in a periosteum, which is a connective tissue, and secured to the bone by perforating fibers. Now, our epiphyseal line is the remnant of our growth plate. In childhood and through puberty, it's called an epiphyseal plate, and this is where it's made with cartilage, and it helps the bones grow lengthwise. At the end of puberty, it's replaced by bone fully, and it becomes an epiphyseal line. So if you're looking at a bone and you see an epiphyseal line, you know that that bone is older than puberty. Around the outside of our bones, we have articular cartilage that allows for movement. It creates a smooth, glossy surface. Again, remember, hyaline cartilage, glassy surface. Inside our long bones, we have a medullary cavity, and this is where we're going to store fat in the form of bone marrow. Yellow is specifically for fat. In children, it's actually red marrow, which all of it will form red blood cells. And in adults, that red marrow is confined just to our flat bones and some of our long bones, but not every long bone. Let's now talk about the microanatomy of our long bone. So if we zoom in, you can see for compact bone, it's made of osteomes, these layers of concentric circles. The layers are lamellae. So if we zoom in again, we're going to see in the middle these cells called osteocytes. Those are the mature bone cells. And they have these layers, these lamellae, and it forms a concentric circle. And in the middle is going to be a central canal, a Haversian canal, that's going to hold blood vessels and nerves, and it radiates outwards these little calcaneus. Bones are dynamic, and our bones are changing not just in utero through the process of ossification, but through childhood. They're going to grow both lengthwise and widthwise. We call that widthwise growth, oppositional growth, controlled by hormones, specifically growth hormones and our sex hormones. And in our adulthood, bones can grow or shrink depending on the amount of calcium in our bloodstream, as well as our muscle activity. And we call this adult dynamic bone growth and shrinkage remodeling. And it's also controlled by hormones, but also by our muscle activity. Let's talk about those three processes. Again, the first one is ossification. This is where in utero, our long bones replace a cartilage skeleton. So we have first a model of cartilage that's in the shape of our bones, and through embryonic development, that will gradually be replaced by long bones. So the bone will replace the cartilage, except for those epiphyseal plates and a few other key areas, like in our skulls. That's why we have soft spots on the baby's skull. It's not fully replaced by bone yet. And this occurs through a process, again, called ossification. We have specific cells called osteoblasts, with a B for builders, that are going to cover the cartilage with a bone matrix. That hyaline cartilage will be digested, and then again, we're replacing it with bone. And at birth, that conversion is almost complete. Bones can also grow lengthwise during our childhood. So they grow lengthwise. We're going to add more cartilage to the end of our bones, both proximally and distally, and then we'll replace the cartilage on the inside. So we'll add cartilage to the outside and replace it with bone on the inside. And the same thing happens at that epiphyseal plate. We're going to add cartilage to the proximal end here, and we'll replace it at the distal end with bone. So we're moving the line up as our bone grows. When we want to grow widthwise, we're going to do the same sort of thing. We're going to add bone to the outside using our osteoblasts, our builder cells, and a specific kind of cell called osteoclasts are going to take away bone from the inside. So we're going to remove bone on the inside, add it to the outside, and grow the width of our bones. Again, osteoblasts are going to add the bone to the external side. The osteoclasts with the C, think blasts for builders, clasts for chaos producers, break things down. They're going to reabsorb bone from the internal base. And this increases the circumference of our bones and is controlled by growth hormones. We call this process oppositional growth. Finally, in adulthood, our bones can remodel as needed. Our body uses our bones as a reservoir for calcium. And so whenever we run low on calcium, we're going to have to release it from our bones. So if blood calcium concentration falls, the parathyroid releases a hormone called parathyroid hormone, or PTH, which stimulates our osteoclasts, or those chaos cells, to take away and eat up some of the calcium from our bones. Now, we can add that calcium back if we increase our blood calcium levels, and we can also add that calcium back by exercising our muscles. Muscle activity puts a strain on the bones, which stimulates our osteoblasts to strengthen them in those areas. So we can think of calcium as determining when we add to our bones, and muscles as telling us where to add that extra bone matrix. If we don't have enough calcium or vitamin D during adulthood, our bones won't calcify, and so we'll get soft, bowing bones. Finally, let's talk about some fractures. There are a bunch of different types that you should be familiar with, but to heal, it's going to occur in 4 stages. We're going to form a hematoma, where blood is going to fill the area. We're going to close the gap with cartilage and collagen. The osteoblasts will migrate in and replace that cartilage with bone, and then we'll have some bone remodeling that will occur. So again, a dynamic process. So in this video, we talked about different parts of the skeletal system. In the next video, we'll move in to the bones themselves.